Hey film fans, welcome to CinePro. Your ultimate hub for all movie recaps. From heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters, everything moves on the platform too. We see a bunch of kids running and playing in this quirky kind of eerie park soon after a bunch of adults start shouting out what they like to eat: pizza, ice cream, eggs, and meat. Every single one of them signs a contract that guarantees they get to enjoy their favorite dishes every single day. One man gets the promise that he can chow down on pizza every day. He warns that if they don't hold up their end of the deal, he'll get as jumpy as he did when he almost set his parents' house on fire while they were sleeping right away. We see the pizza coming in at level 24. But hold up, only fear subdues beasts. He set his parents' house on fire while they were sleeping. Right away, we see the pizza coming in at level 24. But hold up, it shows up incomplete and with a bite taken out of it since some guy from the 21st floor scarfed down the meat. Because of this, the mentally troubled guy snatches another dish that isn't his, feeling like his side of the bargain isn't being honored. The folks from the upper levels try to get the 24th floor guy to understand that he's gotta respect the rules. They've protected the dishes that aren't theirs to make sure the food can reach all the floors. This whole effort is part of a solidarity revolution that's been tough to spread across all levels. But the French guy's explanation starts annoying this man, who clearly doesn't give a hoot if the food makes it to others. Slowly, he lifts a chicken wing to his mouth, and when he's about to take the first bite, his roommate, on the other hand, is on the same page as everyone else. She warns him that if he eats the chicken that doesn't belong to him, there'll be consequences and chaos on the other levels. She offers him one of her croquettes to get him to leave the chicken alone. After trying them and finding them delicious, he agrees to follow the rules for the day, but warns that if tomorrow there's no meat on his pizza, there's gonna be no going back. The French guy also reminds him that he's gotta eat while the platform is at his level, because holding onto food would lead to a lethal punishment from the administration. Finally, he tells him to stay strong so he doesn't get beaten by the hole. At that moment, the platform starts descending to the next floor. The woman asks her buddy what his name is. He replies that his name is Zamiatin, and she introduces herself as Perempuan. Our protagonist reflects in silence, remembering how her favorite dish was the ham croquettes her ex used to make. But she knows it's impossible to eat them again because she's done terrible things. She needs time in the hole to get through her torments. Meanwhile, Zamiatin struggles with a weird dry cough while trying to shave. Suddenly, the lights on the levels turn red, and we hear screams in various languages. Communication from level 44 has been cut off, meaning they can't know if the food is reaching all 333 levels of the hole. The French guide tells Zamiatin that some folks from the upper floors are coming down to 21 to defend his pizza, just like others near floor 444, who will keep an eye on things to make sure the rules are followed and keep the place running. Out of nowhere, everyone watches as the platform shoots up at lightning speed toward the surface, taking out anyone who gets in its way. During the interview with Zamiatin, they asked him how he felt when he was about to wipe out his own parents. He, instead of showing any real remorse, told the interviewer that they sent him there simply because they wanted to get rid of him. The next day, the floors above our protagonists are worried because on level 21, they refuse to follow the laws. Terrible crashes and screams echo every time the platform goes down another floor. The French guy and his partner shout to Zamiatin and Perempuan that they gotta remove the bars from the beds to defend themselves. But when the platform hits level 24, we see a curious plating and the French guy fallen from his level. Plus, the heat is taking a toll on his partner. Perempuan desperately tries to put out the flames that are devouring the woman. Zamiatin, however, stays frozen in place the whole time. The platform starts to descend again, and now they gotta get rid of all the food or they'll be frozen to death. Luckily, they manage to save themselves, and the guy from the 21st floor ends up unconscious and immobilized. They won't let the overweight man attack the one who ate his pizza. He blames the French guy for holding onto a law that, in his eyes, denies him the freedom to eat as they please. The same law that he believes oppresses them, and might have caused all of this. The French guy, furious, screams back that the blame falls on humanity. Perempuan sadly mentions that the woman has died. Rage floods through the French guy, but he manages to pull himself together. He announces that he's sending his friend down to the lower floors to feed those in need, and he'll go with the man to find the anointed ones, those who knew the master who laid down the law in the hole. This Messiah sent a message of hope after surviving an entire month without eating in the lowest levels. He even woke up the next day in an even worse level and had to cut meat from his own thigh to feed those in need, his anointed ones. That's why the Anointed have carried this message of solidarity throughout the whole, fighting for a fair distribution of food. This is a cause the French guy promises to keep supporting, even if it means rolling some heads to make it happen. The next day, the platform arrives back at level 24, and Zamyatin mocks the guy from 21 by showing off his pizza. At that moment, the French guy starts tossing the food from those who died the day before. Our protagonists, horrified, hear that the law established in the whole forbids others from eating more than one plate. The man warns them that from this point on, they gotta protect the plates of food and get rid of them. No one should see the death of a comrade as a prize. He takes the guy from level 21 and places him on the platform, intending to find some anointed before they reach level 44. As the days go by, our protagonists work hard to enforce this newly discovered law even though Zamyatin isn't fully on board. As time passes, they start getting to know each other better and begin living together like true companions, civilized and supportive. The last day of the month has finally arrived. The man looks at one of Perampuan's drawings and admits that he's not as naive as he seems. He explains that his whole life was dedicated to mathematics until he decided to abandon it when he realized he couldn't trust an imaginary solution. He argues that if such a solution is called imaginary, it's because it belongs to a non-physical reality of the universe they inhabit, which fed his distrust of everything around him. Zamyatin left behind his life, his job, his research, and even his family to return to his parents' house for the same reason: distrust. According to him, the imaginary doesn't exist and is completely useless. Then he asks Perampuan how she ended up in the hole, and she remembers mentioning in her interview that she needed time to forgive herself. Moments later, the floors around them start celebrating that food has reached level 175. Perampuan, excited about the achievement, asks Zamyatin to celebrate by dancing. However, the next day they wake up on floor 180. Desperation begins to take over the nearby levels, but Perampuan remains firm in her belief in the system's functionality. Still, the situation is confusing since communication is cut off starting from level 169. They receive news that a lot of people died last month, which means there are probably new folks on the upper floors who'll have to learn to respect the laws. Yet, when the platform finally arrives at their level, it only brings empty dishes. Days go by, and the arrival of the platform no longer distracts them since they know there won't be anything to eat. They spend their time lying down, drawing, or getting lost in their own mental delusions. Until one day, Perampuan can't take Zamyatin's strange and disturbingly entertaining antics any longer, and she decides to step in to put a stop to it once and for all. At that very moment, as if the weight of her action has triggered something inevitable, he starts vomiting blood uncontrollably. Just then, a head falls from the upper floors, while some watch the scene with satisfaction, convinced that the law has finally been applied justly against those who show no respect for the rules. Others deeply lament that they couldn't protect the food that was on the platform. In that context, the shortage of food turns any waste into a tragedy. Zamyatin's cough gets worse by the minute, growing more violent as time goes on. Malnutrition, a constant shadow in the hole, hits everyone without exception. Heads keep falling from the upper floors, a grim reminder of the brutality that rules this world. Our protagonist, weakened and confined to a bed, listens with Perampuan to the rumors circulating between the levels. They hear that on floors 169 and 168, all that's left is chaos and bad behavior. The people on those levels have started being called barbarians because they're trying to sabotage the already fragile communication between the different floors of the whole. Still, the rumors keep spreading through the levels, and with them, people start pointing out those who supposedly don't follow the laws. Among those named is Zamyatin, the obese guy from level 24, known for his disregard of the rules. But Perampuan, always trying to keep a sense of survival, argues that they themselves were once on level 46, and during that time, they did everything they could to avoid being labeled as barbarians, acting with integrity. Turning her attention back to Zamyatin, he, barely able to speak, confesses that he knows his end is near, that he's going to die soon if he doesn't get proper food. Faced with this desperate admission, Perampuan, in an act of compassion, suggests that they do whatever it takes to survive, even if it means facing punishments or sanctions. After all, in this place, survival is the only thing that really matters. A brief flashback reveals that Zamyatin actually dropped out of school at 16. All his business ventures failed, and his family kicked him out. Even his own parents got tired of him and, thinking he needed discipline, offered him a place in the hole. In the middle of the night, Zamyatin wakes up, gets out of bed, and approaches the edge of the abyss. When Parampuan wakes up too, he tells her that he's made a lot of mistakes throughout his life, recalling how he ate food that wasn't his. He asks her not to come any closer so he can take the punishment he deserves without dragging her down with him, saying she doesn't deserve to be punished for just trying to help him. Before he steps away, he asks her to find his kids when she gets out of the hole and tell them their father always loved them. We see Zamiotin setting fire to the blanket covering him. Slowly, the flames engulf him, and in a final act of bravery, he leaps into the void. This brings joy to some, as they believe justice has been served, his punishment has been carried out. Down below, we can clearly see a group of people standing at the very bottom of the hole. The next day, Perempuan wakes up on level 51 with a new companion. From the upper levels, word comes that no barbarian has been identified, and from the lower levels, they report that up to level 71, everyone is loyal and new. Our protagonist quickly realizes her companion is new to the system, so she starts explaining how everything works. Then she asks her what she chose as her meal, and the woman responds that she picked plums. The woman warns her that she'll only be able to eat that unless she arranges some sort of trade. When the platform descends to their level, they notice there's food missing because there's been trouble between level 46 and the one right above. But soon, one of the anointed ones is coming to calm things down. Later, a new uproar breaks out when they spot a barbarian on level 54. He attacked his companion, and they recognize him as someone who was on level 2 last month, where he ate until he vomited. The woman volunteers to go punish him, but the law of the hole is different and she is forced to stay put while others closer by take action. Her new companion doesn't get why the woman is so upset, so she explains that last month her partner died because of people like that guy from level 2. The woman finally gets her anger, realizing that those kinds of people are the ones who mess up the system. Our protagonist starts having brief visions of Zamiotin, while the heads of the barbarians keep falling. The other levels cheer as they recognize the anointed one who fights for them until death, Dagan Bagi. When the platform comes back to their level, the woman's new companion ties up her hair with the only hand she's got and takes a bite of her food. Then, she flips her bed and breaks the frame to arm herself, encouraging the woman to join her so they can go down and seek justice. The two of them descend to the next floor, where the men there ask them to stop, warning that if they leave the level with them, they'll break the chain of communication. But the women refuse to sit idle. One of the men decides to stay behind to protect the chain, while the other three continue their descent, picking up 2 more companions on the next level down. When the 5 of them finally reach the dreaded and chaotic floor, the tension rises instantly. Wasting no time, they pounce on the 2 anointed men who are running the place, taking them down quickly and efficiently. But the barbarian, desperate and crafty, manages to leap onto the platform. The women don't hesitate for a second and immediately go after him, determined to stop him before he can run away from his punishment. Even though the men with them try to help, though not all that effectively, it's the woman who, through sheer will and determination, finally manages to take him down. However, before they can finish what they started, the barbarian, now beaten and cornered, pleads with the woman to stop. Gasping for breath, he begs for mercy, claiming he only ate to regain what he'd lost in the year and a half he'd been trapped in the hole. But the platform keeps going down, carrying the man with it. The woman's companion, still filled with rage, says she wants to finish what they started and chase down the barbarian to end him for good. Yet the woman stops her before she can act. In that brief moment of calm, as the adrenaline begins to fade, later, the woman confesses she's been in the hole for 6 months. She understood the law right from the start, even though she thought parts of it were unfair. Still, she decided to follow it for the sake of the system. She tells the woman that once, she and her previous companion came across a young man, starving and on the brink of death. They gave him a dead man's plate so he could eat. A few days later, the strictest of all the anointed ones, Daganvagi, arrived and decided to punish both of them for breaking the law, even though they did it to help someone in need. She had her arm amputated, and her companion, Kakasi, had her eyes gouged out. They left her naked and tied to the platform for the others to feast on. The woman tells the story through tears, and the woman comforts her, saying they just gotta hold on and survive till they can get out of there. But her companion replies, almost defeated, that no one ever leaves the hole alive. However, she confesses that she believes it's possible to escape during the interval. She explains that every month, sevoflurane gas is used to reconfigure the levels while everyone sleeps, but she's still trying to find a way to stay awake. Days later, one morning, the woman starts witnessing the horrific acts of Daganbagi. Her companion insists they need to hurry and go down more levels, since both of them broke the law by intervening against the barbarian. The platform descends slowly, carrying a man tied up on it. Dagon Bagi arrives blindfolded, accompanied by more anointed ones, and makes his presence known on the woman's floor. He announces that, thanks to their pacifist intervention with the barbarians, they'll be rewarded with more food than they're entitled to. He explains they need strong men and women to defend the law. Suddenly, they're overpowered by these people, and we see that the man who stayed behind to maintain the communication chain will also be punished for allowing the women to go down and for not upholding the law of the 4 following ones himself. One of the women tries to justify her actions, saying she acted according to what she believed was best for everyone's safety. However, Dagon Bagi responds that the law isn't up for interpretation. It simply must be followed. Dagon Bagi proceeds to inform them of their punishments. Perempuan protests, arguing that they shouldn't punish someone who's protecting the law. He retorts that many have had to lose something to survive until today, mentioning that, in his case, he lost his eyes. Then he announces that the woman with one arm will face the same punishment as Kakashi did. At that moment, the man who was there when they first descended intervenes, telling Dagon that if he lets the woman go down, she'll escape. He recounts the plan the women had devised to get away, and due to how absurd it sounds, everyone bursts out laughing. The next day, we see our protagonist and the others tied at the edge of the hole, their arms stretched out toward the abyss, and we're back with those kids from the beginning, playing on the same slide. But suddenly, the place erupts into chaos. Perempuan wakes up on the 72nd floor, accompanied by an older man. They both decide not to interact with the upper or lower floors. The old man has brought a knife as his item, while Perempuan remembers the escape plan she had with her former companion. When the platform arrives at their level, the old man starts gobbling down everything he can find to eat and drink. Perempuan, on the other hand, climbs up on the table and suggests her companion do the same. She keeps having visions of Zamiatin, and when she descends to the level of the barbarians, she proposes that they join forces to rebel against the loyalists, even though her true aim is to escape. As they continue going down, they look for more allies, though many prefer to keep following the laws. As more people join the cause, the chaos on the platform intensifies, fueled by their plans for freedom. Finally, they decide to stop on one of the levels, where Perempuan is mesmerized by a painting. The old woman who lives there greets them with the warmest disposition, offering a heartfelt welcome, although she doesn't receive the same courtesy from the barbarians. While all these folks prepare to face the law's zealots, they spend the night enjoying, dancing, and celebrating without end. But at dawn, the loyalists make their presence known, descending from dozens of floors above. In their effort to weaken the barbarians congregated on a single level, the loyalists waste all the available food down to their level. Dagon Bagi is willing to pay the price of letting the rest of the levels die just to enforce the law. However, he offers mercy if they hand over the leaders of the rebellion. The chaos continues, centered around the desperation of what they'll eat, and the old man proposes they keep descending to feed on the loyalists who are still below. This option seemed like the key to solving all their immediate problems, filling them with deep excitement to continue their own cause, freedom. Yet, Perempuan remains motionless, remembering how during her interview she mentioned a significant art exhibition where she showcased several sculptures. Her boyfriend attended and brought their son for her to meet, but our protagonist clearly recalled that the boy couldn't sit still. As she reminisced, she felt the old woman feeding her something, trying to nourish her after days of not eating. Perempuan continued having visions of her fallen companions, and in that interview she recounted that her boyfriend's son tripped and crashed into a dangerous sculpture that didn't have proper safety barriers. The child died upon contact with some sharp blades. The judge ruled it a tragic accident, and Perempuan became one of the top artists of her generation, selling each of her sculptures for millions. Suddenly, we're back in the present, where the barbarians are gearing up to attack, but they don't take into account the walls made of mattresses that protect the loyalists, giving them a clear edge in their defense. Blood starts to spill. The massacre doesn't stop, and one of the barbarians whom Perempuan had previously spared decides to turn against her. However, the old man, who had been hiding under the bed, subtly slides his knife over to Perempuan. She grabs it to defend herself and takes out her attacker, then hides back under the bed, revealing that by the end of the battle, most of them are dead. The only ones left standing are Perempuan and the old man. As they look around, they see Dog and Boggy lying on the ground on the brink of death, even though Perempuan has the knife in her hands. Instead of striking, she chooses to tend to his wounds. She mentions that she could cut off his limbs to keep him alive by feeding on his own flesh, but then admits she wouldn't do that because she refuses to let her imagination run wild with thoughts of inflicting torture. Flashing back to the interviews, Perempuan had shown deep remorse for not protecting the statue that caused her boyfriend's son's death. She confessed that if she could turn back time, she'd do anything to save him. But since that wasn't possible, she decided to enter the pit to take some time for reflection. As the days go by, our protagonist begins to clean the room and tells the old man she's going to leave. He responds that he'd stay, because that had been the best month of his life. However, despite fighting for freedom, they both understand they can't escape their own moral prison. Perempuan remembers more of her conversation with her former companion, who told her they needed to pretend to be dead so they could get taken out of there and then improvise later. At that moment, we see the children again. They're all fighting absurdly until one of them, illuminated by a light, is pulled away by some guards. They make their way to him, whisper something in his ear, and calmly take him away. Our protagonist manages to wake up just as the gas starts to spread throughout the pit, since just moments earlier she had ingested a hallucinogenic patch she found in a painting she had held onto at all costs since she saw it in the hands of the educated old woman. Just as her friend had instructed her, she pretended to be dead to get taken out during the cleaning. They brought her to the 333rd level, at the very end of the pit, and there she took advantage of a moment of distraction to free herself from her bindings and hide under the bed on top floor. From her hiding spot, the woman watched as they cleaned and organized everyone, getting them ready for the start of another hellish month. Even though her goal of escaping was crystal clear, her weakened body began to succumb to the effects of the gas. Spotting a sleepy child on the bed in that last level, she decided to save him, wanting to spare him from such horrific suffering. However, in the process, she hit her head hard, unleashing a torrent of terrible hallucinations. Perempuan saw the people from her visions gathered around a table, urging her to annihilate the child so they could devour him. Though horrified, she refused, and suddenly she snapped out of her trance. Now fully aware, the woman descended beyond the last levels, coming across a group of starving people desperately searching for food among the scraps left on the platform. One woman from the group told her that only children were allowed to go back up. Despite Perempuan's unwillingness to abandon the child, they told her that her journey had come to an end, but she could still offer the little one a chance at salvation. With her heart heavy with sorrow, she allowed the child to go up alone, hoping he could save himself. In a post-credits scene, it's revealed that everyone present had made similar choices at some point. We see Gorang and Trimagasi again, where Gorang mentions that the girl on the platform was the message. However, Perempuan emerges from the shadows and asks what he's doing there. Neither of them answers, but they embrace in a silence that's thick with meaning. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the next video. Goodbye.